Good evening, my local drones. It is I, Bio Gundam. I'm backing in for another video. Yeah, it's been a while. Yeah, I've been busy with stuff, but so today we're doing like an impromptu discussion stream. Me and my buddy Heraclius decided to watch the Transformers Generation 1 movie together, and you know, today's video we're just gonna be like talking about it and maybe like G1 in general, and and we might be doing more Transformers-related content in the future. So, Heraclius, introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Bio Gundam. I want to ask you, when did you first watch this movie? Like, around, like, how old were you?
Oh, fuck. That would have been, I was at least 9 or 10 years old. Yeah, around that age.
Yeah, that's around when I would have watched it. I was like a young kid who'd like only ever seen the Armada cartoon. And it was around then that my father bought me like this Transformers movie that he saw at like Borders bookstore back when they were still a thing. And I had no idea what this was, and I popped it in, and I thought it was just absolutely the coolest thing. And you can really tell how this is a type of film that is really going to appeal to a boy of like 8, 10 years old. Like, this is visually, audially, like a stunning film.
Yeah, like, yeah, it's, I haven't seen the new Blu-ray releases they've done for this film, right? But, it's a very good-looking film from the 80s. Like, this is comparable to, say, like, something from, say, like, Zeta Gundam or something like that. Like, it's very well animated.
Oh, much better than that. Like, this is a movie budget. Like, this isn't a TV. Which, by the way, you probably didn't notice it, but, there were a couple scrapped Zeta Gundams in the Zeta Gundam mechas in the holding cell when Rodimus and Cup were being held there.
No, I did not. That's very fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, because all this stuff, of course, was being animated by Japanese animators, yet, funnily enough, the film was never brought over to Japan until, like, 89 or 90 or so.
Yeah, and that was about roughly when Transformers Generation 1 basically kind of, well, it didn't die outright, but it kind of stopped, like, the momentum had.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. When you want to say Generation 1 ended, is kind of up in the air. We should probably back up a bit. Transformers started out, of course, as a big cartoon show brought over because Takara Tomy and Hasbro wanted to sell these toys that they were already making. They combined them into one brand, and they offloaded all the lore writing to a bunch of people over at Marvel Comics. But by far the most popular was the 80s cartoon. And the cartoon was very much probably the best of the 80s cartoons for kids, but was very much a product of its time.
Yeah, it's very, like, it's a bit cheesy, it's a bit corny at times, you know, there's a bunch of space shit, you know, there's some weird episodes. It's very 80s, but it's very memorable as well.
Yeah, the show, probably the brilliance of the show was the fact that it was always very character-driven. You got an equal look at the Autobots and Decepticons as on each side. The show almost never played favorites, and occasionally you'd have episodes devoted entirely to just the evil Decepticons. And all the characters are, like, they're sort of 1 to 2 dimensional, but they're constantly feuding with one another, fighting, building off one another. But
I mean, the Autobots have, like, their own pissing contests too. Like, you know, it's like a giant fucking fraternity sometimes.
Oh yeah, and it's all in a very childish way that that really works for like a kid's cartoon. Well, one of the famous things that everyone knows about is Megatron will just literally cough, and Starscream will go, "Megatron has fallen! I am your leader!" And that would happen in some variation in like almost every episode.
Yeah, so always scheming and stuff like that. So you know, and obviously in the show, like no characters die, like no permadeath. Like it's very like
no,
not at all.
Every episode tended to be like Megatron has some master plan to bring some energon from Earth over to the Autobot, to the home planet of Cybertron. And, like, that was pretty much always it. And his plans always went up in flames. and the Autobots never made any definitive plans of their own. They were always reacting to something the Decepticons were doing.
Yeah, and Megatron's schemes get more and more harebrained, like trying to harvest like tidal waves and hydro energy, nuclear power, solar power.
Yes.
And oil too. Like I think there was one episode was like stealing all the world's oil.
Yeah, pretty much. So this show was very successful at the time, as was the cartoon. This was like the...
Well, it's fucking robots shooting each other with laser guns. They turn into cars and vehicles and shit. Like, who doesn't like that?
Oh, yeah. And the brilliant part, from the perspective of the toys, was that you had very realistic, like, car robots. Like, good enough that they could pass for, like, a die-cast,
yeah, so fun fact, right? So my
own.
stepdad had one of the original metal Megatrons, like the Generation 1 Megatrons. Yeah, it got confiscated from him at school. But, like, he had one of the original... Like, basically, the teacher thought he brought an actual gun to school.
Yeah, no, I can believe it. Because, of course, Megatron turned into Walter P-38, the Nazi sidearm of choice.
Yeah. But yeah, like the gun, like here's the thing: some of the toys back in the 80s, like some of the the die-cat, some of the Transformers toys, like especially some of the older ones and some of the more high-grade ones, are actually pretty good quality.
Oh yeah, they definitely worth the time. And the thing is, like, they very much were alternate mode first, robot mode second, and so as a result, you got these toys that were very much a 2-in-1, didn't feel like you were shortchanging kids or anything like that. As time went on, that would start to change, and it would actually start to change around the time that the toy line for this movie got released. But this show was very popular, and so the studio execs decided to greenlight a big movie production, and they were even going to put this thing in theaters for the kiddies.
They did, actually.
Yeah, and rather prophetically, the TV spot, there was surprisingly little advertisement for this film. And the little 30-second TV spot they aired on TV and exited with a quick little blurb. Does Prime die? Find out. In theaters now. And no kiddie at the time. No one could have expected that, yes, their great heroic truck Optimus Prime would die.
It gets a lot worse from there.
Yeah, this film in some ways it barely has a plot, although it does have sort of a plot running through it. The first third of it is literally just the Decepticons decide to attack an Autobot station on Earth, and you get some really awesome scenes of them fighting. And then once that is all over, this new antagonist, Unicron, comes in, giant, angry, evil planet of metal, and he comes in, makes a deal with Megatron, and reformats him into a new personality named Galvatron, and they go on this grand chase where Galvatron has to
I think we're skipping some steps.
Matrix.
We're skipping some shit. Like, the first third of this movie is very...
Of course. Yeah. And Galvatron has to destroy the Matrix, and the Autobots have to go and find Galvatron. And honestly, the Autobots don't even know what they're doing. Like, they're just sort of like, oh...
They're running away from the big, scary guy with a gun.
Yeah. They're just sort of running away from being chased, and they're just sort of hoping for the best. But what makes this film work, what especially, like, in the second half, is just the sheer sense of adventure and how much craft the animators put into this.
Oh, yes.
Like, some of the shots, the lighting... Like, this is a film that is a little rough around the edges at the time.
Yeah, there's a few, like, missed panels here, missed colorings here and there, but like...
Yeah, but at the same time, the level of animation, in terms of movement and flow...
It's great.
It is really great, along with the detail. It helps the square, boxy designs of the old Transformers are very iconic and look very nice, especially when done up like this movie budget, where they get to fight amongst themselves.
Yep.
But yeah, the first third of this movie is
where childhoods go to die.
Yeah. So one of the great parts of any toy line is you have to introduce new toys. And if you want to introduce new toys, you have to take the old toys out of the market. Now, there are various ways of doing this. One of the most common ways nowadays is just to say, or at least where it used to be, because arguably toys aren't a huge part of the market anyway, like except for Lego. But back in like the 90s, 2000s, let's say, one of the great ways to sell a new brand of toys was to like reformat a character. Like, this is Iron Man. Now this is Iron Man with like the submarine suit on or something like that.
Yeah, like Action Man, that type of shit.
Yeah, stuff like that. In Transformers, the movie, the studio execs had the radical idea of just kill off the old character. Kill them off. Show them on screen getting shot as smoke breathes out of their mouth and they fall to the ground and their bodies go pale. And show that to the kiddies. Hey kids, we got a new toy here. You want to buy this? And
you forget the thing is also show them like other characters dragging other characters' corpses to cover as well.
Oh yeah, like it is almost shockingly tone deaf that this was conceived in this manner. That there was no concept of, gee, the kids are attached to these characters. They might not like watching this to happen.
The executives are like, tough shit, we're about to make some art here, folks.
Yeah, and to be fair, the artists do great work with it. And the fact that they killed off so many characters actually had a very integral part to play in the history of the whole franchise. Because you see, after the show stopped airing on TV in like 87, 88, the main thing that you could actually get on VHS was Transformers the movie. And sure, it was a fun adventure, but it was dark. A lot of characters died. And so it created this retroactive image, along with the Marvel comics, which are a whole other can of worms.
Yeah.
That Transformers was actually kind of serious business. And that
it's not just like, oh, you know, Megatron's trying to steal Energon. Like, no, this is a very brutal war drama with giant robots.
Which, to be clear, the original series was not like that for the most
part. No, it was not. I mean, here's the thing. There were times where Autobots or characters were in danger, but not to the point where, you know, they're literally being, like, headshotted and whole, like, massive crater-sized holes blasted into them.
Yeah, Transformers G1 was the type of show where no character died ever. Not a good guy, not a bad guy, no one. Like, that's just the type of show. Here, at the 10-minute mark, Megatron and his crew stroll into the Autobot shuttle, and they just start massacring everyone they come across. It is a wild sea change.
Yeah, and then it gets, and then there's like the massive like Autobot city battle.
The other controversial bit of this movie was it introduced a new cast of characters. For the most part, outside of the Dinobots, who were sort of favorites, and hey, who doesn't like a giant robot dinosaur? Outside of them, almost the entire cast from the full final two-thirds of this movie is new cast members. You have Hot Rod, who is basically the chosen one, Ultra Magnus, who is basically the proud, stoic warrior type, very humble. And you have Cup, who is just the old-timer. This reminds me of the time back in...
This reminds me when I killed 20 Decepticons with nothing but a toothbrush and an oil canister.
Yeah, he has... reminds me of a time. I think he has like that line 4 times.
When I was on Romulus, when I was on Romulus Prime, taking care of an Energon refinery, and the dust was so thick you'd use windshield wipers on your optics.
Yeah.
He's like a fucking grizzle. Like, actually, here's the thing. Actually, this was the 80s, right? He rhymes with like a World War II veteran, actually.
Yeah, no.
Because this is the 80s. Because most of those guys would have been still alive at that point.
Oh, of course.
And actually, you would have been getting Vietnam vets as well, and Korean War vets. So you know, he kind of reminds you of that. Like, you know, he's this guy. He's like, he's seen it all, done it all. It's like, hey kid, I got a story for you. You know, it reminds me. So there was this old guy I knew. He was actually at the D-Day invasion. Like, he was actually like there, and he would just like tell me like when I was a little kid, he used to tell me stories about like, you know, like the smell of charred German flesh and gunfire and gun smoke and like all like the crazy shit.
Yeah.
He's like, little boy, I've got a story for you.
Yeah, little boys are enamored by such stories. And so the first third of this film is this really brutal fucking siege of an Autobot city on Earth, and
it doesn't hold, and it doesn't like hold back. Like there's dead Autobot bodies everywhere, like holes blasted into them, blasted apart, rockets flying.
Blasted into them, and at the same time you have this wonderful 80s synth score by Vince DiCola, also worked on Rocky IV. Some have called this film, like, I showed this film to a friend once, and he basically said, this is like a music video. And that is quite correct. This film is like one long-running music video. Like, this is before my time, but like the type of thing that you'd show on MTV back when MTV started.
So MTV was a little before my time. However, like I would have been really young when MTV was a thing, right? But like my auntie was really big into MTV, like, you know, creative type, right? Like she was big into MTV. We had a similar channel in New Zealand called like C4 as well. It's very much that music, kind of hip, kind of, you know, stick to the man type shit. Yeah. Like I was old enough to remember that shit, but you're like, yeah, this does kind of like what I think is great about this movie, about the first third, right, is it kind of like, I know this is not like a dirty word, but it kind of like subverts and deconstructs something. Like you expect one thing, right, and you get this like you get this gritty war drama music video.
Yeah, more or less. And the other very controversial thing they did, which I think really did end up hurting them a lot in the end, and contributed probably quite a deal to the downfall of this franchise at the time, is the main character, Hot Rod. He's the Luke Skywalker. He's the
when we were doing our rewatch, I was definitely getting like Luke Skywalker vibes. Like I can definitely see why critics were kind of like, and the critics of the day were being like, this is very similar to Star Wars. Like,
oh yeah, there's definitely a certain amount of inspiration, but not in like a super direct way. There's some slight visual.
Yeah, there's like influences, although I wouldn't be surprised if some of the people who worked on this film weren't at least familiar with George Lucas's work. I mean, I'm fucking sure of it.
Of course they were. Of course they were. Star Wars was a phenomenon.
Actually, I wouldn't actually be surprised if some of the people who worked on this didn't work on Star Wars as well.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, and there was... Yeah, but it's not like it's a ripoff or anything remote.
Oh, no, but you can definitely see, like, some of the tropes pair up. It's like, oh, that reminds me of that.
But, like, it's most similar in that it's very much tracing the monomyth idea. And Hot Rod is definitely like the monomyth hero throughout this story. And even though, like, it's not like you get to see this character reflect on anything, or even necessarily grow that much. Like, there's not even time for it. This is not the type of film where you get to see, like, a character screw up and he learns from it, or anything like that. Nothing like that happens in this film.
Yeah, that's like, that happens in, like, season 3, but that's not relevant to this discussion.
At best, you see him act a little cocky, and then you see him act a little more mature towards the end, and like that's about it. But you very much get the sense that this kid is sort of like the chosen one. This is the kid. I mean, literally, the Matrix, the MacGuffin chooses him. But the very controversial thing they did is they made it so that Father Optimus Prime, great leader, the paternal figure for like every kid at the time, his
a role model, a role model to everyone.
Yeah, his death is partially the fault of Hot Rod, because Hot Rod got in the way when Megatron was about to shoot Optimus, trying to save Optimus, but instead Megs took him as a hostage, and it only allowed Megatron to shoot Optimus dead. This, understandably, did not endear many people to Hot Rod. And Hot Rod even goes up to Optimus as he lays there dying, goes, Optimus, forgive me. But the issue, like, it's not that it doesn't make for a good scene. And
it's a very good scene, but, you know.
Or it doesn't make for good motivation. But the average kid is not exactly a very even-handed type person who understands someone else's fuck-ups. They see you're responsible for his death. You blankety blank 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 that elementary schoolers lured out like they do in South Park. Like,
yeah, like I was watching an interview, and some of the like writers for like the Transformers movie, they still get people saying to them, fucking 20, 30 years after the fact, with people saying like, "Hey, I was a kid who watched that movie. You killed my childhood. How dare you? I remember you, you son of a bitch." And the guy says, like, listen, I had no choice. The suits made me do it.
Yeah. No, and it is, like, absolutely shocking that they were this tone deaf through all of it. But it is very much the credit of the animators, the writers, everyone that was working on this, that they make it work. And you have this great scene. Part of what makes it is
the music.
Well, the music also, but there's this great scene of Optimus's death, and he passes on this newly invented MacGuffin, which is just invented out of a hat called the Matrix. Although, to be fair, I think it might have existed in, like, prior Season 2 episode or something.
And it may have been a thing, like, I mean, it's not impossible they could have had that thing. Like, I think they may mention something like that, because we don't really know how Autobots choose their leaders or something like that. So it may have been a passing thing. But yes, it's a MacGuffin. They have this MacGuffin.
Yeah, and Optimus, on his deathbed, gives a prophecy that this giant emerald that he keeps in his chest, the Matrix, will one day light our darkest hour, and that it's like the responsibility of the Autobot leader to care for. And he passes it to, at this point, his most trusted lieutenant, completely new character, Ultra Magnus.
Yeah, because the other lieutenant is dead on the shuttle. It's like, yeah, it has to be you. Why me? It's like everyone else is dead.
And as the Matrix is falling from Optimus's failing arms, it falls into the hands of Hot Rod, and there's this scene of, like, lights lighting up.
Yeah, it starts glowing.
Yeah, and it's like, it's kind of weird. It's not entirely clear if the lights are just in Hot Rod's head, or if everyone can see him. It, like, pans away and everyone just disappears, and there's just the light. So I believe the implication is it's supposed to be in Hot Rod's head only, because it makes it kind of odd that no one ever comments on this afterwards, and no one ever seems to think, we need a chosen one. Why don't we consider Hot Rod? Like, it never passes into anyone's mind.
Yeah, because, like, you know, if the magic MacGuffin is glowing when someone touches it, right, and you need a chosen one, that's usually a good sign of, like, maybe it's this guy glowing.
Yeah, so and you have this great scene where Optimus they have it like his mechanical heartbeat, his electrical heartbeat, and they show his eyes slowly glimmering and going out, and then his whole body turns gray, and he head slowly tilts to the side with this dead expression on his face, and you've got the kid bawling out his eyes on the giant robotic hand. Like, the animators were doing a really, really good job in terms of, like, storyboarding this, conceptualizing it. And just
you can tell they're really skilled in their craft of traumatizing children.
Yes.
They've honed it well.
Yeah, which technically, we didn't talk about the opening scene of this movie. Speaking of traumatizing, the opening scene of this movie sets up the ultimate antagonist, Unicron, and we open to this giant planet that's just drifting through space. It's got an artificial ring around it and these giant pair of pincers. And as it drifts through space, it comes across this planet of robot. They're not Transformers. They can't transform, but, like, a planet of robot people.
Yeah, they could be, like, proto-Cybertronians, or maybe from the same, like, you know, maybe similar to Yeah, and it just starts nomming this whole planet with this disastrous music going. Just giant red sky everywhere, red lights, the whole planet being torn apart, pieces being sucked up bit by bit by bit, every person on this planet dying, all but one shuttlecraft being sucked into the void of this giant munching creature of doom, and it shows them all getting munched up, and then a giant lights on the ring showing that this creature has been fed and is happy now, and then that's it. Roll credits. Roll opening title. Imagine being the parents watching this film with your kids, and you're like, what the, like, that opening scene is going to tell you are in for a ride.
It's just robots, who cares? But yeah, it's a really intense scene. And like I said, good.
And very dark, too. Like, an entire race just gets wiped out almost in a nanosecond.
Yeah, and that's in a... Let's see, how long is it? Less than 2-minute scene. Like, yeah, 2-minute scene. This film does not waste its time.
Yeah, it's very quick. I mean, I do know the more deleted scenes and stuff they cut, but, like, you know, like, this film doesn't waste time.
They say deleted scenes. Those are scenes that they just never chose to finish because there wasn't time. I mean, it's hard to call it a deleted scene.
Well, you know, they were going to add more shit to the movie, but they didn't have enough time. But, you know, what we got is pretty good anyway.
Yeah. Anywho, with Optimus dead, Starscream and Megatron dying, Starscream does his usual thing of kicking Megatron out into the void of space and clearing himself leader. And
I like how Soundwave calls the Constructicons and every single Decepticon's like, yeah, you guys suck, I'm the king.
Yeah, and everyone aboard the Decepticon shuttle starts fighting amongst themselves about, I'm best leader. No, I'm best. It's very kid-like.
Yep.
So as Megatron is floating through the void of space, dying with the rest of his almost dead crew, he comes across this giant monster planet, and it tells you who he is. He says that he's Unicron, and he proposes a devil's pact. Megatron, serve me and destroy the Matrix, the one thing which can destroy me. And Megatron goes, I've already killed Optimus. And Unicron goes, no, the Matrix has been passed on. Destroy it for me now. And Megatron initially says, no, I don't want to be someone else's. But then in this, like, great horrifying scene, the Unicron just goes, proceed on your way. Giant flashing red lights fill the screen, and Megatron starts screaming in pain, presumably as all his, like, pain receptors are activated all at once. Like I said, this film is really fucking intense, especially for the time.
Yeah, like, keep in mind, like, yeah, to the modern day viewer, this may not sound a big deal because, you know, we've got lots of shit that's even darker than this. I mean, even when it comes, like, let's, like, look at anime and shit like that. Like, you got way darker shit than this, but, like, for the time, this was pretty dark for a fucking kids cartoon in the 80s.
Yeah.
You know, this was shit that was, like, you know, Transformers was something that was, it was almost a household brand, like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Like, yo, children watched this.
No,
it
was a household brand.
Yeah,
Yes.
This was a household brand movie. And it's like, yeah, you have someone get, like, tortured live on screen.
Yeah, very much so. So Megatron is forced to accept his terms. He gets reformatted. He instantly goes back to the Decepticon home planet and their coronation area. And he does the thing that he should have done 4 million years ago. He kills Starscream.
I love that scene. It's like, Megatron, is that you? Here's a hint. Bang.
No, that's clearly not you, Megatron. Megatron would never do that. And the way they just show Starscream crumble to the ground.
Yeah, his colors fade, and he's like crumbles to the ground.
And then the new Galvatron just gets on top of the little crown that Starscream was wearing and just crushes it underneath his heel. It's one way to make an entrance.
Yeah, like, listen, I'm liking this. I'm liking this Galvatron guy. Like, you know, he just shows up, murks a dude, he says, like, anyone else want to take his place? No? Okay, I guess I'm the leader now.
So after this, immediately...
they attack Autobot City again.
Yeah, 2 Autobot moons, moon bases get nommed by Unicron. They send out a distress signal to the Autobots on Earth, and Galvatron immediately goes to go kill the Autobots that have Plot MacGuffin the Matrix. And there's a big chase. I mean, at this point, it almost does a disservice to talk about the plot, because, like I said, there is barely a plot stringing this together.
No, listen, we don't need to go into too much details with this part, because it's basically like, you know, ragtag band of Autobots running away from fucking Galvatron, who's going to kill them.
Yeah, Galvatron's going to kill them because they have the MacGuffin that destroy Unicron. And the rest of this film is just Galvatron hunting them, and them getting away. But what makes it is that on doing all this, we see them go on these adventures to all sorts of weird, strange planets.
Like the the Shaktakon pit.
Yeah. Cup and Hot Rod immediately get crashed and stranded, and they open on this scene of them in this giant watery area, this giant evil mecha squid which is just squeezing the life out of Cup with this blaring 80s music going, and like this film is the definition of 80s squid.
Yes.
The music, the designs,
the attitude.
Oh yeah, you've got films like Dare to Believe or Dare to Be Stupid. Like this film is just about the most 80s film you can watch.
Yeah, it is very 80s. Like, you know, it's got that attitude of, you know, I'm gonna do it, fuck you. Like, you know, it's got that, I don't know how to describe it, but it's definitely not as, like, cynical as the 90s were.
No. There's definitely, I guess
you know what it is? It's the attitude of, like, I think the 80s, at least with this movie, has the attitude, it's like, yeah, times are tough, get over it. We gotta, like, crush some Decepticons.
Yeah,
you know.
crush some Deceptichops.
Yeah, famous last words.
Meanwhile, the other Autobots get crash landed on this planet of junk,
and they get ambushed by Australians.
Yeah, okay. Actually, let's go back to the other planet. So, Cup and Hot Rod go through this water mechanical planet, and as they walk through, they come to this bunch of weird fish-looking robots, and these fish-looking robots say to them, and Cup goes like, "Hey, let's use the universal greeting. Give him some food. This'll work." And they don't have enough food to go around. And so these fish-looking robots just get angry, turn into giant alligators, and take them away. And when they awaken next, they find they're in this horrible jail where these giant squid people, calling themselves the Quintessons, although I don't think they actually say the word Quintesson once in here, they are presiding over this ridiculous farce of a trial system where they hold a robot over a giant pit of Sharktacon, and they ask the Imperial Magistrate, guilty or innocent. And then they drop them into the pit because they are innocent. And they get feasted on and just devoured by these Sharktacons. While the giant floating head turns its heads one by one around, laughing maniacally. Like, it's one of those things where it's so fantastic and so wild and so interesting. You don't need it to make sense. You could say that's a cop-out in a way, but I really don't think it is. Because it's something like, it strikes at something so mythical, this idea of, like, total perversion of justice, and you've just created, like, the ultimate representation of total perversion of justice.
One of the trials is like, oh, you can beg for mercy, it helps, sometimes, innocent, in the Sharktacon pit.
Oh yeah, when our heroes are put on the plank above the Sharktacon pit, he goes, "Would you like to beg for your life? It sometimes helps, but not often." It's just... This film is also, like, very quotable. There are so many, like, truly...
I've got better things to do. I've got better things to do tonight than die.
Yes. And actually, one of the annoying things is, especially on big final battle between Optimus and Megatron, one shall stand, one shall fall. These lines became ingrained in Transformers mythos.
Yes.
To the point that it sometimes became a little bit annoying, and they would sometimes have these characters spout off much later incarnations, these lines almost out of context, where it didn't really make much sense, but it was like, hey, reference.
Yeah.
That tends to happen to everything.
Yeah, well, Transformers has been going on for, what, like 30, 40 years at this point?
Yeah, a very long time, since 1980. Yeah, going on 40 years. So meanwhile, so ultimately, Cup and Hot Rod are able to escape thanks to the help of the Dinobots. With the mere suggestion to the Sharktacons, they're able to incite a class revolution on their planet.
Yeah, I guess communism, I guess there's a one time when communism worked.
Yes. And they immediately get on a shuttle to go reunite with their friends. Meanwhile,
their friends get ambushed by Australians.
Yeah, a bunch of people who talk in these ridiculous, I guess you say Australian accents. I don't know what to call their accents.
No, it's this weird mix of, like, British, Australian, and New Zealand. Like, it's this weird mix of the three. I mean, I say Australians because, you know, Mad Max, but, like he does sound a bit Australian. It's like, is this what the...
And then, like, every line they say, it's so corny. Every line they say is some sort of pun or advertising scheme.
I mean, one episode of season 3, like, Rick Garcia is like, he's dead, Jim.
Yeah. Oh, that is absolutely tame compared to some of the stuff he says here, where it's like, offer expires while you wait. Operators are standing by. What? So our heroes over there get hunted by them, then they get hunted by Galvatron. Ultra Magnus, the great stoic, humble leader, ends up being blasted to smithereens, absolutely destroyed, and Galvatron absconds with the Matrix. And
well, one leader down, another one down, third time's the charm.
And what I think is so great is, and I think shows, it's surprising that this level of whiplash isn't, like, noticeable in the movie, but it actually flows really well. You open with the Autobots, like, coming across the dead, charred remains of Ultra Magnus, and they're in total despair. They're saying there is no hope at all.
It's
and
over.
Then all of a sudden, these junk robots start attacking, and the song "Dare to Be Stupid," talking about putting your hand in a microwave to give yourself a tan, is playing. And then our heroes, Hot Rod and Cup, arrive. Hot Rod gives the universal greeting and a single Energon cookie. And this time, the junk leader's like, "Oh, ba weep, grana weep, ninny ba."
Listen, if I ever encounter aliens, I'm going to use the universal greeting. Like, that's how I get out of trouble.
And immediately, after trying to kill them literally a minute before, they start breaking out into these wild dances with each other as the camera pans out while Dare to Be Stupid keeps playing. This film is a riot.
Yes, it's listen, when you buckle in for the Transfer Generation movie, you are in for a ride. You gotta buckle up.
Yeah, this film operates on its own sort of logic.
Yeah, and so basically they have this really great party, and Junkyards are like, they knew about Unicron and shit like that, and the second the Autobots say, like, oh, we're gonna fight Unicron, they're like, oh, that sounds like a cool idea, let's go do that, and they ride on this giant spaceship to Cybertron.
It is entirely unclear why these guys were so hostile when just a simple hello was enough to make them best friends forever and risk their entire lives and fortune.
Yep.
Oh, and they also magically repair Ultra Magnus, who was blown into a million pieces.
Yes, little do you know that the Junkions are not only just master sages, they are also like the best medicine or the best doctors in the galaxy when it comes to Cybertronians. They can revive the dead.
Optimus Prime sure would have loved that help.
Or what about the other Autobots that died? I mean, I'm sure the people in the shuttle who died might need that help too.
They're not important.
I know, but you know, you need more soldiers for the war, so...
So as the Autobots and their new junk friends take off, Galvatron goes to Unicron, presents the big emerald matrix to Unicron and says, "See this? I now hold what you must fear. You will obey me." And Galvatron, rather foolishly, doesn't understand that you need to be the chosen one in order to open this thing. And so Unicron is totally unperturbed by this and just starts transforming, and we get this like 2-minute long transformation sequence, which again I cannot praise far enough in terms of presenting like a sense of absolute scale, of mechanical depth,
and fucking the Unicron is scary. Like this giant, it's like, oh, a big planet. Then he transforms. He's even bigger.
Oh yeah, he's even bigger, and he's got moving parts all over the place. It really creates this sense of like a mechanical living thing. And we see Galvatron is just like a tiny speck underneath Unicron's chest as these giant flashing lights on his torso light up, and Galvatron just looks up in sheer like horror. They really managed to animate horror on this guy's face.
This is a robot that can smash entire cities with just his finger.
Yeah, which he then commences to do.
Like, I don't know what the actual scale Unicron is, but like the guy is massive.
Yeah, Yes, so he immediately tells Galvatron, "Hey, I was going to spare your home planet, but because you tried to betray me, fuck you. I'm destroying your home planet now."
I mean, pretty fair by his... I mean, there's no guarantee he would have honored that deal, but, like, I wouldn't be surprised if he was going to honor his deal.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, also, the voice actor for Unicron, I think, did a good job. Now, despite him not liking it and him being, like, sick at the time and dying...
Yeah, this movie pulled in a lot of celebrity voice actors. You've got Leonard Nimoy as Galvatron, you've got Judd Nelson as Hot Rod, and you have Orson Welles, the director of the best movie of all time, voicing Unicron in his final role ever.
Yeah, like, here's the thing, he died a few weeks after his lines, so this is like literally the last thing he did.
And one of the most shocking things about it, not so much the fact that he had no idea what he was doing, and he described in one interview that I'm a giant toy that kills other toys, and there's a big explosion at the end. And that was basically his understanding of what he was doing.
Yeah.
But what's more shocking is apparently the recording of his voice was utterly terrible. Like, he was so sick at this point that he couldn't put in a good performance.
Yeah, like, apparently, like, a few weeks after they did it, he died. So, like, he was final days for him.
But they managed to put this through, like, a voice synthesizer. And Unicron has this booming voice of stern authority to it, which is very, very iconic.
Yeah, and he kind of portrays this thing like he just doesn't care, like he's above the petty concerns of us mortals, like, you know. And, like, I do know the guy was sick and he kind of didn't really care for the role. I think it kind of added to the character. Like, you know, he's playing as a literal omnipotent god.
Well, I mean, the comics would portray him as an omnipotent god. The cartoon would end up giving him a backstory of being this random creation. But yeah, the movie and the significance with which he treats him does almost give a godlike feeling to this creation, this creature.
I mean, if you can destroy planets in, like, a couple of minutes, like, who really is going to stand up against you?
Yeah, really. So all the Autobots basically drive straight through Unicron's eyes and go straight into his belly and start, I guess you could say, basically searching around for something vital to destroy inside there.
Yeah, or at least, like, you know, death by 1,000 cuts. It's like, oh, you know, we blow up this artery, we blow up this, and eventually he's gonna fall eventually.
And we get to see, like, these absolutely crazy mechanical areas where there's, like, a defense system of these giant death tentacles with pincers.
There's, like, sulfuric acid baths.
Yeah, people who get taken in, get thrown into sulfuric acid baths and get melted to death, and we see them melt to death.
While screaming.
Yeah, horrifying stuff. There's a big climactic battle between Hot Rod and Galvatron. Galvatron, who's just totally arrogant about all this and is taunting Hot Rod about, you Autobots never have, like, the courage to do what needs to be done. It's a shame you all die so easily, or I might have a sense of satisfaction. But ultimately, Hot Rod wrestles the Matrix away.
And he lights the darkest hour.
Throws Galvatron out the window, like literally out of Unicron himself. He undergoes a strange personality shift and immediately unleashes the Matrix. They all escape, and then, as you see Unicron just explode in a zillion directions. Cut to Hot Rod, now Rodimus Prime, and the gang. All 7 or 9 of them on Cybertron declaring that, yeah, clearly all the Decepticons are gone. Let this mark we've won forever as we look forward to a new age of peace and happiness. Hooray! And that is the film.
Yeah, you see Optimus Prime, you don't need Energon to conquer Cybertron, just have Unicron do most of the work and then kill him.
Yeah, just no, you see, you use the periphery faction against the center, and you as the outsider can come in and take over. That's just the way it works.
Yeah, so, you know, the Autobots finally kick the Decepticons off Cybertron because all of them are fucking dead, or most of them are dead at this point, and those who survived fucked off to God knows where.
Pretty much.
And,
yeah, this is a film, you're very, like...
It's like a fever dream sometimes.
It is almost like a fever dream. And it is, like, totally wild in terms of what happens to it. This is not something like... This is not like some Disney film like Aladdin or something like that where there's, like, a coherent character arc or anything like that. This is like a wild goose chase of an adventure where you get to see the strangest, most craziest parts of the galaxy as they're just animated in spectacular detail while blaring 80s music goes through your head. Like,
this is partially why I like stuff from the 80s, because especially like the sci-fi shit, you know, going off to far distant planets and seeing all this crazy shit. You know, like, you know, Earth has some pretty crazy shit, but guess what? There's entire planets out there and whole galaxies of crazy shit that you must explore. You gotta go out there and see all this crazy shit.
Yeah, and the emphasis is very much on the adventure, not necessarily the characters. Although, to be fair, the voice actors all put in very good work. And one of the things that has always made, like, especially early on, the Transformers series work was the sheer level of quality of voice acting and ADR and special effects.
I mean, we're going to mention that when we're going to have to mention that when we do that discussion about Beast Wars, but like, you know, Beast Wars Megatron is great. His voice actor is great. Did an amazing job. Yes.
Yeah.
No, you gotta say it like this. Yes.
But this film would end up being, as we said earlier, very consequential, not only because it shaped the image of what Transformers was.
It was also kind of infamous at the time as well. Like,
it was infamous because it set off season 3 to basically be about brand new characters. And to be frank, the series never recovered.
No.
I've
watched season 3, like, as much as the grand, like, space opera shit was, I do prefer, like, season 2. Like, I think that was, like, the highlight. That was, like, the peak of Transformers G1, and as far as I'm concerned.
I mean, whatever your opinion is, one way or another, better. The fact of the matter is that kids did not buy into these new characters as well. And, in fact, speaking of, the Marvel Comics most explicitly did not go down this path and continue to have issue after issue after issue of the old characters. But not so for the cartoon, which just dropped. And to be clear, this movie also had a limited run in theaters and wouldn't have been out on VHS immediately, and even then you would have had to rent it at time. So for a lot of kids just jumping into season 3, it would have been like a huge shock. Like, what on earth happened?
Yeah, if you didn't see the Transformers movie, you didn't know anyone who'd seen the movie, right? You'd watch season 3, it's like, what the fuck is going on? Who are all these people? Yeah. Why have we jumped into the future?
Exactly. And because of that, and because of the, you could say somewhat backlash of all the favorite characters dying /
and angry parents
away.
And sad children.
Well, I don't know if there were many angry parents, but there were many sad children.
No, the parents were angry because their children were sad. Like, I remember reading some shit about this. That, like, you know, like, angry, like, they were getting phone. I think one of the directors or something said, like, yeah, he was getting angry phone calls from parents. He's like, why did you do this? Like, this movie is, I mean, I think it's a bit of a cult classic now, but, like, this movie was infamous for its time. Like, we can't state that enough. I mean, actually, if there's anyone watching this who was around, who was a kid during those times, like, you know, like, comment down below, right? But, like, you know, I'm a 90s kid, so I was too young. I wasn't even born yet I wasn't even born, so, you know, but, like, yeah, if everyone was from, like, the 80s, or, like, you know, a child during that time, or, you know, was a teenager, yeah, let us know in the comments down below, because, like, like, this movie was infamous. Like, we can't undersell it. Like, this was infamous.
No. And because of that, the cartoon would only last for really a single more season, after which they inevitably had to bring Optimus Prime back to life. And there was a technical fourth season where which had just three episodes to its name. But after that, Transformers as a TV show went completely off the air. And outside of reruns with new footage around them, Transformers would not be on the airwaves from 1986 till 1996. That's the longest dead space in the franchise's history, pretty much.
Yeah. I mean, you know, that year was pretty important because we got Transformers Beast Wars, which was is also part of the G1 continuity.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's a whole other can of worms.
Yeah, we'll get to that when we get to that. But yeah, Transformers Generation 1, it's one fuck of a movie.
Now the comics, now in Japan, various cartoon sequels would continue into the 90s, and in the comics, especially in the UK and the US as well, comics would continue until the early 90s, and then they'd get a brief 12-issue sequel in the form of Transformers Generation 2, which thus retroactively named the earlier Transformers Generation 1. But it's fair to say that while this film defined Transformers and made it something greater than it deserved to be,
it also killed it.
It also killed the franchise in the short run.
Yeah. Well, it'll be going on for an hour. Holy shit. So yeah. How would you rate this movie, actually? Because I'm thinking of giving it, like, at least a 7 out of 10.
Yeah. How to rate this movie? I'd probably give it, like, a 4 out of 5, maybe 8 out of 10. I'm biased because I grew up with this movie. When I was a really, really young tyke, I memorized every word of this.
Yeah, I'm like, cause here's the thing. I grew up on the Transformers. Like, when I was like 5 or 4 years old, I was watching Beast Wars on VHS. Like, yes, I'm that old Zoomers. I remember what a VHS was.
But yeah, it's interesting. There are some, like, fans, quote unquote, who will attempt to say, like, this movie is, like, dark, gritty, and mature, and it's like, yes,
and no,
but really no.
Listen, it's as close as you're gonna get to an 80s cartoon, let's just say.
Yeah, but at the same time, like, you could say in a way that it's style over substance, but in a way the substance is in the visuals and in the music and all that stuff, and not necessarily in the script writing or anything like that. But that alone is so above par and so one of a kind to really make this, like, a film that I can heartily recommend to the vast majority of people.
Yeah, and, like, here's the thing, like, you've got people on YouTube who are, like, animating the quote-unquote cut content. Like, you have Transformers artists who are, like, animating the shit, like those YouTube links I sent you before, like, earlier on. So,
yeah.
Like, it's not like this movie isn't, like, popular. It still is.
People have been making stop-motion recreations of various scenes from this movie for the past 20 years. That is not an exaggeration.
Nope. You can see some of them on YouTube right now.
Yes.
Yeah, so I'd say in, like, terms of staying power, this movie has, like, it's got longevity. I mean, Michael Bay should really take notes from this. Like, this is how you do a Transformers movie.
Well, Michael Bay did things his own interesting way.
Like, here's the thing. I would say the first movie's great, the second movie's decent, and then it just kind of goes downhill from there.
Yeah. Michael Bay very much wanted to do his own thing. He's an auteur, and that's somewhat good, somewhat not so good, but that's more or less a separate discussion. I don't want to, like, throw too much shade, because while obviously I prefer this,
I mean, here's the thing. I like the Michael Bay movies. Like, don't get me wrong, but I'm saying in terms of, like, longevity, like, they don't. Oh yeah. They kind of fail in that regard, which is, like, aside from the first Michael Bay movie, like, I think the others just kind of, like, fade into the distance. Like, they just don't have the staying power.
Yeah, every other movie but the first from Michael Bay has really faded into this big blob of mess that no one remembers too well, other than, hey, I don't think that one was that bad. Whereas this film, Transformers the movie from '86, is still very iconic to this day.
Yeah, you can't beat you can't beat it. True movie fans only like retro shows. The end. A snob reference. Well, I think we're gonna wrap it up. Thank you, Heraclius, for joining me, and we may see. I mean, Heraclius, you will be seeing Heraclius again later on because we are going to be covering some more Transformers stuff. You know, because there's something different to do and talk about. Plus, me and Heraclius are kind of Transformer. We like Transformers, so why not talk about it? It's interesting enough.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is me signing out. So I'll see you all later. Heraclius, any final words? Goodbye.
Just farewell till all are one.